Hello there, you're with NDTV. I'm Maha Siddiqui. Just a week before the presidential elections, the opposition strategy seems to be in tatters. The opposition has propped up its own candidate, Yashwant Sinha, but now increasingly they seem to be striking discordant notes within the opposition as to who they'll support. And here's why. We'll quickly explain to you why their strategy seems to be failing. The latest seems to be the fact that the Shiv Sena has now clearly announced that is going to be supporting Droupadi Murmu, who is the opposition, or the NDA candidate for the presidential election. So here are some of the big points that we will bring out for you to explain why the opposition strategy seems to be failing at this point in time. So first of all, here are the various players within the opposition camp who have already now expressed that they might be on the other side, that is, might be supporting the NDA candidate. Remember, also very importantly, no whip can be issued for the presidential election. And if there is no whip, then what happens? Everybody votes. All the people in the Electoral College, which includes the MPs and the MLAs, minus the nominated members, they will all vote according to their own will. Let's take a look quickly now at the broad details of what the opposition has said. Shiv Sena has decided to support Droupadi Murmu. That announcement has just been made by Uddhav Thackeray. Let's take a look at the other parties. Mamata Banerjee, in fact, she's the one who had actually proposed that the opposition does bring in their own candidate. Now, she has indicated that had she known that Droupadi Murmu is going to be the NDA candidate, then perhaps things could have been different. In fact, Uddhav Thackeray has pretty much said the same, saying that had they known Droupadi Murmu, a tribal leader, is going to be the NDA's choice, then things would have been different, and that is the reason that they are now supporting her. Meanwhile, just a week ahead of the presidential election, Congress MP Rahul Gandhi has left for Spain. Now, this was a time when the Congress leaders would have wanted one of their leaders, the bigger name in the party, Rahul Gandhi, though he's not the party president any longer, but would have wanted him to be part of the strategy of the party in parliament as well as the presidential elections. It is at this crucial time that he's left for Spain. And now let's talk about the Samajwadi Party as well, where Shivpal Yadav, the uncle of Akhilesh Yadav, has also indicated that he is going to support Droupadi Murmu, which also means that many of those who support Shivpal Yadav will also be on the side of Droupadi Murmu. And I explained to you why. That's because no whip can be issued for the election of the president. So everyone votes according to their own will. This now really is making the numbers in favor of Droupadi Murmu heavy. We are looking at the NDA's choice now of a woman candidate who's certainly scoring much higher than the opposition candidate, Yashwant Sinha. That's because it's a woman leader the NDA has chosen. She's also a tribal leader. Again, a sizable tribal population in Maharashtra. That is why Uddhav Thackeray had to make that choice as well. She has administrative experience as well, having served in the government earlier on. She also has experience as far as constitutional position is concerned. She has been a governor as well. So certainly the choice for her that the NDA has made, her as a presidential candidate from their end, certainly scores higher in favor of her. Many parties now, almost a 60% of the Electoral College now in favor of Droupadi Murmu as the presidential candidate that they want to support. So clearly, this seems at this juncture to be a major victory for the government with the candidate that they have pitched. What happens to Yashwant Sinha then? What is the kind of support that he continues to get? Let me bring in Sanket. He's going to explain those numbers to us. Sanket, help us understand how the numbers are stacked now.
That's right. So it's very important to understand, as we all know, that as far as the presidential elections are concerned, they operate on a concept called the Electoral College. There are about 10.5 lakh votes which constitute the Electoral College. Let's go to that breakup one by one as to where each party stands or each candidate stands in percentage, because otherwise, calculating these lakhs will be a bit of a problem. So on your screen right now, let's go full frame so that you can understand who has how much. Ms. Droupadi Murmu has 42.3% of the BJP's share, 2.09% of the JDU, 1.38% of the AIADMK. Now this they knew that they have all along. Apart from that, YSR Congress gave its support of 4.22%. BJD, the Biju Janata Dal, gave its support of which increased the tally by another 2.93%. What we are calculating in percentage, this is actually the Electoral College. You need 50% plus to be able to be the next president in this country. BSP has given its support. Both the factions of the Shiv Sena, the Shinde faction and the Uddhav faction at 0.63% and 1.7% have given their pledged their support, and 4.61% of the independents have also pledged their support, which takes the total tally, errors and omissions expected, because this will keep changing as more and more parties are going to decide, is at this moment roughly around 60.64%, 10.5% more than what is required. So Droupadi Murmu is already, if this math is in place, already has an easy sailing as far as the next president is concerned. The parties that are yet to decide, we know that Jharkhand Mukti Morcha is going to, in all likelihood, give its support. So that's another 0.62 that is going to be added. The Aam Aadmi Party is 1.97%. If that goes to Droupadi Murmu, that will also be added, and the TDP's support. So if you add this 3.5%, the tally will go up to 63-64%. And also do remember that in the presidential elections, they don't strictly happen on the basis of party lines, which means parties can't issue a whip. Each and every individual, because this is an election for a constitutional post, each and every MLA or an MP is free to choose who he wants to vote for. So there no party whip is in place. So will there be a situation where many of the Congress leaders will also cross vote in favor of Murmu? Many tribal women leaders will vote for Murmu. So, one is expecting that this tally could, at least that's the calculation, could even cross 70%. Now the point is, where does this leave Mr. Yashwant Sinha in the great grand opposition battle? It was being considered as this, grand idea of the opposition. Well, if you take a look at these numbers and how many of these opposition players are now drifting towards the candidature of Droupadi Murmu, it's very clear that the index of opposition unity, at least in the case of the presidential elections, may not exist.
Yes, absolutely, Sanket. That's what it appears to be like at the moment. The numbers heavily in favor of Droupadi Murmu. Of course, that was expected, but the manner in which some of the opposition constituents are now drifting towards Droupadi Murmu, clearly, as you pointed out, the numbers are speaking for themselves. Let's take a look now at what Uddhav Thackeray said to justify their stand of supporting Droupadi Murmu. He, in fact, also pointed out that in past occasions as well, they have supported another candidate, not particularly the alliance that they belong to, and they've cited the example of Pratibha Patil.
मैं द्रौपदी जी को शिवसेना की ओर से समर्थन देता हूं और आने वाले समय में जब वो राष्ट्राध्यक्ष बनेगी तो मेरी यही इच्छा और शुभेच्छा शुभकामना है कि हिंदुस्तान जो आज की स्थिति में चल रहा है उससे उभर कर आगे बढ़े और एक समर्थ देश पूरे विश्व के सामने आए, यही मेरी शुभकामना है.
The question we are asking then, has the opposition abandoned Yashwant Sinha? Joining me now on the show, Dr. Shashi Panja. He is the national spokesperson, or she's the national spokesperson of the Trinamool Congress. Atul Patil, spokesperson of the Congress. Debjani Bhattacharya, political analyst, pro-BJP analyst, and finally Sanjay Gupta, leader of the Shiv Sena. Sanjay Gupta जी, आपसे शुरू करते हैं. शिव सेना ने ये डिसीजन लिया. उद्धव ठाकरे ने बोला कि किसी प्रेशर में डिसीजन नहीं ले रहे हैं, लेकिन एक तरह अब ऑपोजिशन बिल्कुल बिखर चुकी है, क्योंकि यशवंत सिन्हा का नाम रखा गया था सामने, लेकिन ऑपोजिशन के कितने सारे लोग हैं जो अब द्रौपदी मुर्मू को सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं.
देखिए, द्रौपदी मुर्मू जी को सपोर्ट करने का मतलब ये है कि एक तो कैंडिडेट अच्छे हैं, दूसरा द्रौपदी मुर्मू जी को सपोर्ट करना बीजेपी को सपोर्ट करना ही है, एनडीए को सपोर्ट करना ही है, और शिव सैनिकों की भावनाओं का सपोर्ट करना है, और शिव सेना के सभी लीडरांस की भावनाओं का सपोर्ट करना है, क्योंकि बीजेपी एनडीए ही हमारा मेन अलायंस है और हमारी पार्टी के ज्यादातर लीडरांस इस बात में विश्वास रखते हैं कि जो हिंदुत्व की बात है, जिसके लिए इतने साल हमने लड़ाई लड़ी, उसके ही हम साथ रहें। कांग्रेस हमारा अलायंस कभी भी नहीं हो सकता। तो मुर्मू जी का सपोर्ट करना मतलब कि शिव सैनिकों की भावनाओं का आदर करना है और बीजेपी को सपोर्ट करना है। और द्रौपदी मुर्मू जी एक बेहतर कैंडिडेट है। अगर इतिहास को भी देखते हैं तो जिस तरह से उनका राजनीतिक एक्सपीरियंस है, जिस तरह से वो आदिवासी एरिया से काम करती हैं, और महाराष्ट्र में बहुत से आदिवासी एरियाज हैं, तो इन समस्याओं को भी वो जितने बेहतर तरीके से समझ सकती हैं। तो इन सब बातों को ध्यान में रखते हुए भी इस बात का डिसीजन लिया गया है।
लेकिन फिर सवाल ये खड़ा होता है कि अपना कैंडिडेट खड़ा ही क्यों किया ऑपोजिशन ने? लेट मी गो अक्रॉस टू डॉक्टर शशि पांजा ऑन दैट। डॉक्टर पांजा, why then did the opposition have this big meeting, decide on a name, hunt for a candidate? Because the first few candidates even refused, the proposed candidates refused to in fact even be the opposition's presidential nominee. Now that you have Yashwant Sinha, things seem to be falling apart.
No, it's like going back to the previous debates when we all started, when the opposition platform met. And the arguments, or, we still stand by those, that we wanted such a candidate who would protect the constitution and work for the country's interests and not just be a rubber stamp. So that was an argument, and that was the proposition that the opposition platform had put. Second, I think opposition parties do have a right to give a candidate for the presidential elections. That is going back to that debate. Now, third is there were occasions, and you also know, that the opposition, when approached by the ruling party, but when the opposition asked who your candidate would be, they never disclosed the name. This is also true, who their proposed nominee was. So, we have a question in the reverse direction. Did the ruling party actually, or the ruling party and its allies, actually wanted the opposition also to be with them and have a consensus candidate? It's because they always believe in unilateralism. Now, when our candidate name was announced, when we asked them, who's your candidate, they did not say. But when the candidates were announced from our end, after that they came in with the name of Droupadi Murmu.
All
now,
right.
as we stand,
so Dr. Panja, I'll interrupt you there because I want to bring in Debjani Bhattacharya here. Debjani Bhattacharya, do you think that the NDA was trying to play a game with the opposition, as is being suggested, by not revealing the name of their candidate and making it appear that the opposition is a complete loser by getting most of the constituents of the opposition on their side for the NDA candidate now?
Yeah, good evening all. Maha, what I would like to say is this, that as Sanket Upadhyay has rightly shown the breakup, if we look at the breakup of votes, then had NDA got only the support of Biju Janata Dal, then only their candidate would have swept.
No, the question is not about the winnability of the NDA candidate. That would anyway have happened, as you are pointing out and as the numbers are pointing out. My question to you is that does this ultimately show the opposition in poor light?
The objective, I don't think the objective was to show the opposition in poor light. The thing is, the opposition came with their candidates first, and then they first proposed, West Bengal Chief Minister proposed 3 candidates initially, the names of Farooq Abdullah, Gopal Krishna Gandhi, and some other person, I'm not really recalling the name. All the 3 had turned down the proposition, and then they called for Yashwant Sinha, and eventually the NDA, they had declared their own candidate, and obviously, even after Droupadi Murmu's name being declared, Yashwant Sinha himself commented that we do not want a rubber stamp president. So these kinds of comments came on. So it is not that the objective was to show opposition in bad light, but my point is the NDA candidate would have won, securing only the supports of NDA and BJD.
Fair enough. That point you've already underlined, ma'am. Let me go across to Atul Patil then. Atul Patil, do you think the opposition didn't do enough homework? Because there was a buzz that Droupadi Murmu could be in the race for the NDA candidate. Do you think that either the opposition should have waited for the NDA to announce its candidate, or do you think the opposition has been completely trumped and they need to accept that now?
Maha, you need to see this in the light of how they blatantly make the use of ED, CBI, and income tax to bulldoze the personal opinion and the opinion of political parties. We have seen this, and this is happening in Goa, this is happening in Maharashtra, and this is happening throughout the country. But as far as Congress is concerned, we want a solidarity of opposition to save the constitution. It is even a bigger battle than the battle for any caste, the battle for any gender, the battle for any minority. It is even bigger battle because we need to save the democracy. We need to save the constitution. If it keeps on happening, if you keep on placing a rubber stamp kind of a person on a presidential post, then it would be difficult for us to sail through these difficult times. And this is what we all have to say about it. It would have been a better that even
Patil, if that is the theory with which you all are going forward, where are your top leaders? Why has Rahul Gandhi gone to Europe at the nick of time when Parliament session is about to start and when the presidential polls are going to be held? Shouldn't your party be together strategizing at this point then?
Maha, this has become a tradition since 2014 that you people keep asking questions to opposition only, and irrespective of NDTV is exception to that. I'm not objecting NDTV's objective, but this has become a tradition. This has become a fashion to ask questions to the opposition. Why don't you ask questions to the BJP? Why they are bulldozing democracy? Why they have put constitution in abeyance? This is the main question we need to ask.
But sir,
because
I will only ask you a question related to your party, right? You represent the Congress party. So I'm going to ask you a question about your party and the opposition strategy. I'll come to you. Dr. Panja is raising a hand. Let me go across to her. I'll come back to you. Don't worry. Dr. Panja, I think you want to make a point. Go ahead.
Now, there's just two small points that BJP is expecting the opposition's support, At least they are making it very evident that, yes, you could support and maybe. But the point is that BJP never reciprocates. Even yesterday, such an important event, but they never bothered to call the leaders of the opposition parties. So they disrespect, they neglect, they bulldoze the opposition. Now they're saying the opposition is not coming. This is one. And second, I hope the intent, All India Trinamool Congress has always endorsed women candidates, tribal representations, minority representations, always has endorsed it. But I hope the intent of the platform, the BJP platform, is also very clean, that because there's also a buzz that because there are elections in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Gujarat, and there are about many tribal seats out there. So you have actually an eye on those, and that's why you nominate a tribal woman for the post of the president. I hope it is not so unclean, the intent.
All right, Debjani, you want to comment on that? Because that then again becomes a serious allegation that a constitutional position, and that to the top constitutional position in the country, is being used politically by the NDA.
What I would again go back to the numbers, that before the Shiv Sena thing, the fractionalization of Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, it was sufficient to get for NDA to get the votes of the NDA and BJD to win. After that, the Shiv Sena fractionalization happened and they secured the Shiv Sena Shinde factions vote also. By doing that, Droupadi Murmu's victory was absolutely sanguine. No one else was required.
That is not the question, Debjani Bhattacharya. The question here is that the NDA tried to play a game with the opposition by proposing the name of Droupadi Murmu and not revealing the name, as Dr. Panja said, on request by the opposition, who is going to be the NDA candidate. They did not reveal it till such time as the opposition had already chosen Yashwant Sinha. They are saying the allegation by the opposition is that they knew that proposing Droupadi Murmu's name will create a fracture, will show the opposition in disarray, and that is the reason that the NDA chose her in the first place. And now Dr. Panja is also alleging that this is being done with an eye on the upcoming assembly elections. Respond to that.
What I would say, that had TMC really had no problems with women representation, they didn't suggest even a single woman representation, and not of the stature of Droupadi Murmu. It is not expected that Droupadi Murmu was suddenly decided. It is obvious that the NDA was discussing on and decided upon choosing Droupadi Murmu from much before. It is a separate issue that they didn't disclose. However, TMC didn't suggest even a single woman candidate similar, resembling the status of Droupadi
They've had
Murmu.
one candidate
So
in the
these
past,
types
in the
of
form of
accusations
Pratibha
really do
Patil,
not
who became
stand.
the president. Devjani, I'll interrupt you there because Sanjay Gupta wants to come in. Sanjay ji, ये एनडीए की तरफ से ये दलील आ रही है कि उन्होंने ऐसा कैंडिडेट रखा जो वुमेन कैंडिडेट है, ट्राइबल कैंडिडेट है, हर तरह से वो एक फिट कैंडिडेट है प्रेसिडेंट बनने के लिए। सवाल ये उठता है, आपकी पार्टी भी अब सपोर्ट कर रही है उनको, लेकिन ऑपोजिशन बिल्कुल तितर बितर दिख रहा है। ये क्या आपको लगता है एनडीए की स्ट्रैटेजी थी?
देखिए, इस विषय में यही कहना चाहूंगा कि ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि अगर कोई अपोजिशन में है तो सरकार के किसी भी बेहतर कदम का विरोध ही करेंगे। सरकार के किसी भी बेहतर कदम का सपोर्ट करना भी विपक्ष का ही काम है। ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि इतने बेहतर कैंडिडेट को देने के बाद अगर कोई भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी द्रौपदी मुर्मू जी का विरोध कर रही है तो सिर्फ इसलिए कर रही है।
नहीं संजय जी, बात यह है कि टॉप कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पोजीशन के लिए ये इलेक्शन है, तो क्या सरकार को कंसेंसस बनाना चाहिए था?
नहीं तो किस तरह से, मतलब आप जिस तरह से जिस कैंडिडेट को बीजेपी ने खड़ा किया है, जिस तरह से जिस कैंडिडेट को बनाया, इसमें किस तरह का, मतलब इसमें किसी भी तरह की कोई कमी तो हो, कोई एक कमी हो जिसमें इस तरह
सवाल वो नहीं है। सवाल है कि क्या कंसेंसस चाहिए भी था सरकार को, कि सरकार चाहती थी ये दिखाना कि ऑपोजिशन बिल्कुल बिखर चुकी है? अतुल पाटिल, डू यू थिंक द एनडीए हैज सक्सीडेड इन शोइंग दैट द ऑपोजिशन इज इन डिसअरे वंस अगेन?
No, not at all. See, opposition met in Delhi. We have shown our solidarity. With all due respect to my tribal brothers, my minority brothers, and my scheduled caste brothers, it is not a battle which is limited to whom you are opposing. It is the battle to save the democracy. It is battle to save the constitution of the India, which is in danger. That is why I said that Congress just wanted to have a candidate which can protect the constitution, and Yashwant Sinha ji being a civil servant, he was finance minister of India, and he would certainly not to be a rubber stamp. See, I have not interrupted you. I have not crossed you because Sanjay Raut and Uddhav Thackeray ji has clearly said supporting Droupadi Murmu ji does not mean they are supporting BJP. Supporting Droupadi Murmu ji does not mean supporting BJP has been the stand taken by Uddhav Thackeray ji and Sanjay Raut ji. So please keep quiet when somebody else is speaking. Maintain the decorum of the debate, please. Maintain the decorum of the debate, please. What your party has said, what your party stand, you don't know anything about it. Either you belong to a Shinde faction or you belong to the faction. Make it clear. So it is for us. It is much more bigger battle. It is much more bigger battle than the battle of for any caste, than the battle for any individual. We have given the first women president in the India. We have given first Muslim president to this country by BJP.
क्या लगाते रहते हो आप हमेशा इस देश के अंदर? आप जब देखो मुस्लिम करते रहते हैं आप। क्या मुस्लिम इस देश के अंदर बेचारे हैं? क्या मुस्लिमों के पास अधिकार नहीं है? क्या मुस्लिमों के पास विशेष अधिकार नहीं है? जब देखो आप मुस्लिम करते हैं, आप चाहे कोई दंगे में शामिल हो, चाहे वो किसी आतंकवादी गतिविधियों में शामिल हो, तब भी आप मुस्लिम करते हैं।
Do you mean that you are supporting an authoritarian government? Do you mean that you are supporting a person who is bulldozing each and every
All right. I request both of you gentlemen to stop having that argument while the rest of the panel is just watching you go on. I want to ask Atul Patil. Atul Patil, if you think that the opposition candidate Yashwant Sinha is so important for the democracy and to uphold the democratic ethos of the country, then why was the opposition collectively not able to convince all the constituents?
You have seen the conspiracies, engineered by BJP throughout the period of 8 years. So you should not ask the question why there is a fracture in opposition. Yashwant Sinha certainly would not have been a rubber stamp kind of a president. He would have been an independent president who can uphold the constitution, who can uphold the principles of the constitution and the democracy. And everybody was certain, everybody was sure about it. It was decided in the combined meeting of the opposition of the UPA.
But at the end of the day, unfortunately, the opposition, the major opposition parties, sir, were not able to convince the rest of them in the alliance that Yashwant Sinha's candidature is important. And now the numbers heavily favor Droupadi Murmu. Many thanks to all our panelists for joining us here on the discussion.